And let's then move to the Browns as we look at the AFC North draft needs. The Browns can't leave draft weekend without addressing what? And before we answer that, you mentioned 26th overall pick. They also have an extra pick in the third and an extra pick in the fourth, Chris.
Yeah, I think the one that would jump out to me more than anything, and we've hit the two positions I think that they need the most, pass rusher, and to me the next one is middle linebacker. Again, this. I hate to say this and keep repeating this, but it's the Seattle scheme. There's a formula that's expected within with this defense. You need a legit fly around linebacker. They need their Bobby Wagner, their Fred Warner, their Miles Jack, their Deion Jones. They're the guy in Dallas from Notre Dame, the middle linebacker. I'm blanking on his name. But these
Jalen Smith.
Yeah, right. Jalen Smith. They're Darius Leonard from the Indianapolis Colts. It's all the same defensive scheme. It's all. They're all doing it. And that to me is where that's what the Browns need, is that guy. They need a speed linebacker. And there should be one there, at the end of the first round. It'd be interesting to see who's available, but I think that's the position I'll probably say they need more than anything coming away from the draft in those first few rounds.
To answer the question strictly and literally, the Browns can't leave draft weekend without addressing blank running back because of Nick Chubb. They've yet to sign him to a new contract. They've got Kareem Hunt under contract. If they get lucky and throw a dart and get a guy who can come in and be Nick Chubb, post Nick Chubb, you don't have to pay Nick Chubb $13, $14, $15 million a year to keep him around for 2022. If you choose to go that route. It's a tough move for a team to make, and we see most of these teams who cultivate great running backs find a way to extend the relationship and pay the guy a lot of money. The Browns, very heavy on the analytics of any team out there that would be willing to say to a star running back, see you later, and sorry fans, if you bought the guy's jersey, you should have known not to buy running back jerseys for Cleveland Browns players if we're going to go heavy on the analytics, because we're going to find a guy dollar for dollar far more effective than Nick Chubb. One way to do that, Chris, use one of those third-round or fourth-round picks on the best available running back. That's where you can find some great running backs who can develop into among the best in the NFL.
No doubt. That would be nice. That certainly would be. I mean, yes, to not have to worry about, signing that big contract or have that running back have to do that. I get you. Either way, they got Chubb. That was Chubb's third year, right? Last year. So
this is his contract year.
This is the contract year. This is the year either way. Yeah. I mean, you make a solid point. There's no doubt about it. He's special. He really is. He's one of the 5 best running backs in football. And I think really, realistically, it's the best duo in football, right? At the running back position. Is there a better duo?
Yes.
Your one in Minnesota is pretty damn good, but this is right there at the top, I think.
But they bought Kareem Hunt so low as a result of the things that happened when he was on the Chiefs. They have him locked up to a very, very favorable deal. I'm just telling you, I don't think the Browns are going to flinch the way that we've seen Vikings, Titans, Panthers, Saints flinch just to keep around a guy who's regarded as a great running back, because that next great running back is always coming. And the reality is, what is the shelf life? What's the real shelf life for a running back? What is it? Right, Derrick Henry with 2,000 rushing yards this year, now entering year number 6. How many more years can Derrick Henry do it? How long does any running back consistently play at a high level like that? Adrian Peterson is the only one we've seen in the last 20 years to do it.
No, I mean,
Frank Gore, and future Hall of Famer Frank Gore.
Right.
Don't want to overlook him.
Yeah. But even that though, I mean, Adrian Peterson's really good. There's no, I mean, he's a superstar. Frank Gore's superstar, yes. But I mean, like you're talking about, that's 2 guys in 20 years. Derrick Henry, he's kind of a freak show himself too. He's different, so he might be able to last a little bit longer. But we're seeing with other guys that's not the case. It's definitely not. And I don't know, they're in Cleveland. As far as like a team that seems to be heavy on the analytics and things like that, I think, Mike, you make a valid point. There's no doubt about that. Listen, drafting running backs this day and age now, and even like I have to do my running back rankings on my podcast today. We're going to break this down. One of the thoughts I went into, or you have to erase out of your brain, is like, screw long term. That thought doesn't exist. Like, don't evaluate running backs coming out in the draft to be like, well, I think this guy could last 6 or 7 years. No. I'm looking at a running back going, how awesome is he going to be for 3 or 4 years? And then I'm thinking I got to get a new one. That's all there is to it. You can't expect anything else out of that position with how violent it is. So it's a good point by you. It's a good conversation altogether.
Some great running backs who had solid seasons and then not. DeMarco Murray, right. Jamal Charles, Le'Veon Bell, Arian Foster. There are plenty of guys out there that burn bright, and then that's it. And it's hard to maintain it for an extended period of time. And so the question becomes, what do the Browns do? And I just think that before you above all else, even if you're thinking about keeping Nick Chubb, you need to have another guy ready to go as your leverage when you're trying to get Nick Chubb to take a deal that doesn't set a new bar, that doesn't tie your hands from a salary cap standpoint at a position where you know you can find somebody younger and cheaper. And if it turns out the guy's a home run hitter who is going to be one of the best running backs in the NFL, then maybe you can say to Nick Chubb, thanks for 4 years. We're going in a different direction. All right, we'll go in a different direction to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have the 24th overall pick. They have plenty of needs, especially on the offensive side of the ball, Chris. What can they not leave draft weekend without?
Well, that's offensive alignment. This is the easy one for Pittsburgh. I mean, it really is. Of course, we know their defense is in a pretty good spot. Wide receivers in a good spot. They're another team that, running back, they need that. There's no doubt. But I think offensive line is more than, is the one thing that you just go, wow. They need to get younger. They need upgrade. I think it's the reason you saw Mike Tomlin in Notre Dame a few weeks ago for that pro day, because he's sitting there looking at Liam Eichenberg and going, wait, I need an NFL ready right now, can play type NFL offensive lineman. And Notre Dame's got 2 of those this year. So I don't know if it's going to be somebody in the first round. I think there could be some guys there, certainly, at all positions. You could have, top-notch center, guard, and tackle there available, at pick number 24 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think that's really the big thing. And yeah, you can't take an offensive lineman that you feel like is a project or anything like that. As we've talked about here the whole offseason, they're in it right now to win it with Big Ben. So they need an offensive lineman that they can plug and play and is NFL ready, not a project that they think will be really great in 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah, Marquise Pouncey gone. David DeCastro's future, who knows? Alejandro Villanueva still unsigned. I guess he potentially could come back and rejoin that Steelers offensive line, but they need linemen. I've said all along they need a Franco Harris style of an impact at running back, a guy who comes in as a rookie and really plays at a high level and is durable. That's been the issue with James Conner. Also remains unsigned after roughly a full month of free agency. Where do you think they'd look for a running back? Is this a high round pick? Le'Veon Bell was a second rounder. James Conner was a third rounder. Or is this maybe we get lucky with a guy late in the draft who we can quickly develop? But they don't, they usually, when they go late round running back, they usually make that guy wait a few years and work his way up. But look where they are from a rushing standpoint, Chris. Last year, 32nd in the NFL. You could argue they need to use a couple of picks on running backs this year and hope that one of those guys hits.
But they've got nothing, out of the position in the last few years. That's for sure. End of the second round, I think there could be some good ones on the board, certainly, that could help their football team. There's no doubt. Yeah. But I don't think you're going to see – I would be shocked if you see a running back go in the first round, really. So I would think at some point after or right around pick 40, you start to see the top running backs in the draft go, and that could certainly make them in the running for one of those 3, 4, 5 best running backs in the draft, definitely. But, Mike, I'm with you. They need something there. We've talked about the Steelers, the attitude, playing the right way for the rest of your football team. You're a defensive football team, so, of course, running the ball and controlling the clock would make sense, and especially with an older quarterback and everything like that. So, here we are. We're talking about O-line, running back, those type of things. I think it is by far the 2 biggest positional needs, Corner is another one you could maybe look at on their football team to go, they could use that as well. But I think the two we've hit on the offensive side of the ball are imperative. Like if the Steelers really want to be in the conversation for winning the AFC North this year.
Gut feeling. Do the Steelers take a quarterback this year, whoever plays meaningful snaps for the team? And not just injury Mason Rudolph snaps. I'm talking about he's the guy. Does that happen this year?
No, I don't think it will. I don't. I think they're going to be one. I think there's, for whatever reason, I just think there's belief maybe in Mason Rudolph could be that guy. I do. And then two, I don't think they're going to be a team that's going to panic right quite yet and just take a quarterback to take a quarterback. I think they're going to ride this out with Big Ben one more year and see where it goes, and and then try to reevaluate when he does retire.
Yeah, and I think he will be done after this year. And look, they waited 20 years between Terry Bradshaw and Ben Roethlisberger. Hopefully for their sake and for the sake of Steelers fans, they won't wait 20 more years to go out and get a guaranteed franchise quarterback. But I agree with you. I think that's something that they address next year. This year is about loading the cannon. They've convinced themselves. We talked about this when they decided to keep Big Ben. They had enough time and space from the end of the 2020 season to say, here's what went wrong. Here's what we need to do.
Right.
We can do it. Let's go do it. Let's go all in. Let's try. And hey, this is one of the teams that when they say they want to win the Super Bowl this year, they mean it because they've done what they had to do to keep the band together, including bringing back Juju Smith-Schuster on a very reasonable one-year deal. They have other areas that they've got to address with guys who can come in and play right away. This is not the year to waste picks on a quarterback who's going to be a developmental type of a player, Chris.
No, I don't think so either. That's right. And, again, Mason Rudolph, we talked about, they got Dwayne Haskins to be that developmental type player right now, right? He's filling that void. They're going to have him. Let's see what he looks like. Maybe we can groom him into something. There is talent there. There's a reason he was the top 20 pick. So I think that's what they've done with that little void on their football team, or at least, let's just see what we got. Maybe they get a diamond in the rough. But I think more than not, we're spot on with the Steelers, and we've hit the two positions they really need to address.
And just on Haskins, when he flamed out in Washington, there was this narrative that, they really blew it. They screwed it up. They never should take him. He still would have been a first-round pick if Washington didn't take him. The Steelers got a first-round quarterback from 2 years ago for nothing, and they get a chance to evaluate him. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, on to the next one.
Yeah.
It's not like they gave up a lot to get him. So, yeah, maybe for as bad as it was for him in Washington, he lands in Pittsburgh. He gets groomed. He learns. He sees what Roethlisberger does. He straightens out some things. He's still really young. We expect these guys right out of college to act like they're 35 years old. No, it takes some time to mature. The brain is still fully developing. It's not fully developed until you're 25. This is a minimal risk, potential maximum reward for the Steelers if it works out with Dwayne Haskins. All right, Baltimore Ravens, 27th overall pick in the draft. They can't leave draft weekend without what, Chris?
Well, the Baltimore Ravens are kind of like in a really good spot as a football team altogether. It's like it's hard to look at one spot and just really go, oh, man, they're desperate right there. I mean, to me, I think the one that just jumps out to me more than any will be the safety position. I think that's probably where I look at like the Baltimore Ravens and go, wait, with those corners, okay, offensive line, it's pretty good in that position. Defensive line, edge guy is certainly another guy that's in that conversation. But I guess I would say safety as we sit here right now. It's safety or edge. It's one of those two. I'm hemming and hawing as I'm going through this. But I think it's certainly something on that defensive side of the ball that I look at. And, yeah, okay, I'll say safety more than anything right now because they can find ways to be creative with their front and do things like that and get after the quarterback that way too.
Big shoes to fill. Top 10 safety Earl Thomas no longer with the team.
Not there anymore.
But they got to get pass rushers. Yeah. Matthew Judon gone. Yannick Ngakoue. They gave up a third-round pick for Ngakoue. You've got two teams that pissed away, pardon me, London, significant draft picks for Yannick Ngakoue last year. Vikings gave up a second rounder and then flipped him in the bad way for a third-rounder from the Ravens when they realized we're not really contending, even though they ultimately did sort of contend. And the Ravens gave up a third-rounder for Yannick Ngakoue, who signed as a free agent with the Las Vegas Raiders. So they better do something there. They had 2 pass rushers walk out the door in free agency, Chris.
No, I mean, Mike, it's really the number one positional need. Where I guess where I'm wrong or not saying that, because I just don't know if there's going to be that legit edge pass rusher there like we talked about, at the end of the first round. So that's probably their biggest need on their football team, and that's where I'll stand corrected. I just don't know if they can get one in the first round that way to be that guy. There's the kid Olujari, who's a really good 3-4 outside linebacker type of guy from Georgia, who's a really good football player, Mike. But I don't know if he's necessarily like a big-time pass rusher, right? I think he's like a really good outside linebacker, edge type guy, almost stand-up linebacker. So that's where I guess I got in a little bit of a conundrum there as far as just like what's going to be available for them to address top-tier pass rusher type guy. Good players going to be there available, certainly, for edge pass rushers. Not sure superstars will be there that way either. So, interesting. But I look at them and go, I don't know, offensively, Mike, I don't think there's anything we look at that they need. Wide receiver, okay, maybe add to the group a little bit, but nothing like where you're just like, oh, wow, they got to do it. It does seem just defense and kind of adding a little icing to the cake that way. And to me, the 2 positions are edge and safety, like we've been talking about.
As to edge rusher, Judon was the 146th overall pick out of Grand Valley State round 5 in 2016. Now it takes time to develop. If you're looking for impact, plug and play right away, the later you draft a guy, the less likely he's going to prove himself to be ready to go. But that's not a hard and fast rule. The problem with receiver, Chris, when you cannot attract free agent receivers, when Juju Smith-Schuster takes less to go play and stay with the Steelers, when other free agent receivers kind of turn up their nose at the idea of playing in an offense that doesn't throw the ball as much, and you haven't proven yet that you're willing to commit to that, and you get Sammy Watkins, who frankly didn't have a whole lot of other viable options. I think to the extent that you can add receivers in the draft, and they've got no choice. Unless they're going to sit out all year and re-enter the draft, they have to go to Baltimore. But I think that's going to be their primary mechanism for getting talent at the position until they can make that offense more attractive to free agents, period. Because at some point, you're going to have your rookies cycle off the roster. When Hollywood Brown, you think he's going to take an extension with the Ravens? You think he's going to push his way to free agency and go get paid somewhere else where he's going to get used more? I think as long as Lamar Jackson's the quarterback and Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator and doesn't open things up from a passing standpoint, they need to draft receivers because that's the only place they're going to get good ones.
Yeah, most likely. And again, not that it's last year's draft, but there's plenty of good receivers in this draft to where it's not something they'll have to be desperate to do, at the end of first round. But again, maybe somebody's there that they value, in a way that's special. Again, I don't know. I think about wide receivers that could be available maybe around then. There's the Kadarius Toney, the University of Florida. He's a weapon. He's like a speed reverse, you can go routes, big play type of guy. He could be that kind of guy that would fit that offense a little bit, Mike. But I think that the necessities we talked about are greater for this football team, which is on that defensive side of the ball. And then, second or third round, maybe receiver. But I think your point's real. There's no doubt. They certainly look like a team that's going to have to replenish through the draft, every few years at the wide receiver position, at least in the Lamar Jackson era.
The Cincinnati Bengals have a new Ring of Honor. They've never had one before. Anthony Munoz, left tackle, is one of the charter members. Here he is from last week regarding his preference for what the Bengals do with the 5th overall pick in the draft.
Anthony, you're going to get, a say in who goes next in the Ring of Honor. You're going to get some significant votes. But if by chance you were given the power to make a top 5 pick for the Bengals, would you go with an offensive lineman from the Pac-12 or would you go with an offensive weapon? Just curious.
Well, let's say, first of all, I got unlimited of 7 guys that I could vote for this next year for the Ring of Honor. I think I'd go Lappa, Montoya, Reimers, Kozerski, Walter, Moonpipe. No, okay, I can't go all linemen. But if they said, Anthony, we're going to allow you to make this first pick, the number 5 pick, I would be pretty excited. Even though he's a nemesis, he's been a nemesis to my Trojans, I would have to go with the guy up from Eugene, Oregon, with Panay. I've watched him several times. I think having signed Riley Reif, you got Jonah, you got Hopkins coming back, you got Sifu. I mean, and now you add Panay to the mix. I think if my name was Joe Burrow, I'd be pretty happy.
You know, the Bengals essentially have, for their purposes, if it goes quarterback, and we don't know about the 4th pick yet, they could have, as a practical matter, the first overall pick because they're not a quarterback.
I know.
Anyway,
that's where they're tough here.
So whether they go left tackle with Penei Sewell, whether they go weapon with Jamar Chase or a guy like Kyle Pitts, the tight end that you can move all over the place. This is a tough call for the Bengals, but it's not a tough call that at some point in this draft, you've got to get offensive linemen to help keep Joe Burrow mobile, upright, and on the field.
No, that's right. And, I think the big question is do you do that at pick number 5? Do you want to do that and go offensive lineman there? To me, the question with the Bengals, or at least, that's worth talking about here and anything like that is, hey, we know they got Jonah Williams, right? They drafted him in the top 10 a few years ago out of Alabama. He's going to be their left tackle. They did get Riley Reif in free agency. Another tackle who's solid, middle of the road. So, to me, Mike, I'm trying to figure out with them, are they going to go, wait, these are our 2 tackles, and now we'll wait to the second round to maybe get a guard or something like that? And then they do what you're talking about, now go Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts or Devontae Smith, one of those 3 guys. I mean, to me, that's the interesting thing about the Bengals and their situation at 5. Where do you lean when I kind of bring up those scenarios?
Well, I want to protect the quarterback.
Yeah.
That's the most important. And it's not as sexy on draft night, and the fans tend to gravitate toward the names.
That's right.
They're going to want to buy the jersey, and they're going to want on their fantasy football teams, and those are the more exciting players. But it's hard to get too excited about a football team that can't keep its quarterback healthy. So
no.
I think if you get a great left tackle, a guy who's generational, a guy who's going to be entering potentially the Ring of Honor 20, 25 years from now, that's what you need to do if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. Plus the possibility of trading down and addressing other needs as well with extra lottery tickets. That's something they can't just write off, Chris. That has to be part of your analysis because they have a lot of needs. This isn't just a tweak here or a tweak there. They got the number 5 overall pick for a reason. Now, one of the reasons is Joe Burrow got injured, but it's not like they were great before Burrow was lost for the year.
Better.
They got a lot of areas where they need to improve.
Yeah, a lot of areas. But I think my logic aligns with yours more or less when it comes down to it. First off, I think Sewell is a pretty special prospect. I really do. Again, it's 6'5" and change or 6'6" and whatever he is, 326 pounds. He's got special movement ability. And maybe for the sake of this year, you put him at guard. You could put him at guard. He could do that. Riley Reif at tackle, Jonah Williams at tackle, and then Sewell ends up going to tackle the next year or something like that. But I think I'm with you too in the fact that, again, if you want to add a receiver or even another tight end, there's going to be some available there at the top of the second. But you're not guaranteed of a really top-end tackle being there at the top of the second. And that, to me, I think is where I go with your logic there, where I'd probably lean offensive lineman, tackle for sure, Penei Sewell out of Oregon if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals.
It would be unfortunate if the Bengals just write off a receiver at 5 because John Ross was such a disaster for them 4 years ago. I hope they don't do that. I mean, I hope they just make their evaluation from the standpoint of what do we really need here? And they would benefit from having a game-breaking receiver. But they also would benefit from having, somebody to give Joe Burrow enough time to get the football to a game-breaking receiver.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. Look, when you get that franchise quarterback, which they have, that's great. That's the hard part. But the work is far from over because then the obligation is to put the team around him, especially, Chris, when you're in that window before you have to pay the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I mean, agreed. There's the receivers deep. They can get one in the second or third round if they need it. Franchise left tackles, they're not going to be there at the top of the second round. I find it highly unlikely that way. And, your point about Joe Burrow, of course, is real. Yeah, you got to protect him. He's the franchise. He's the guy. So let's protect him. And then added to that, too, they got a guy in Joe Mixon who I look at as one of the top running backs in football as well. It'd be nice if they could open up a hole from him every now and then to where he doesn't have to, always do everything by himself in the run game. That's where I think it makes sense. And then, the last aspect of that or last piece of the puzzle I think that makes sense, to why they take offensive linemen is the division they're in. They're in a division with a lot of big, bad, mean dudes on the defensive line. The Steelers, the Ravens, and then, of course, the Browns, there's no slouches. So if you want to beat those teams, you got to be able to block those football teams too, and I think that's where it makes sense for them to be going O-line and tackle with that fifth pick.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.